Good morning and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims. Yes, we'll be breaking it down again verse by verse into factual logical statements in English so that we can understand who or what is Allah, what does he mean by the contents of his book here, the Quran of the Muslims, and more importantly for us as non-believers, how does this affect us in our lives in the world today? So, before I start, as I always do, I'm going to tell you now, if you have any doubts at all as to the things I'm about to say or have previously said, please first buy, translate, and then read one of these. An Arabic Quran, the word of Allah, because the English one, the Quran.com translations, these are all romanticised and not accurate. The Arabic one is the only word of Allah which is accurate, and this is the one we shall be reading from. And after you've done that, you'll recognise every single word I'm about to tell you now is 100% true of what Allah says and what Muslims believe today, despite their many protestations, which are false. So, let's get started. You'll remember if you watched the last few episodes, we've been going through AL-NIISA, which is the book of women, which you would think is going to be about women, but it's not. It's about men and how they procure and operate their women as tools of trade and employment so that they can make money from them and maybe get a few extra wives so they can have sex with them, and how they treat their wives when they are disobedient. And that's where we got up to and where we're going to be carrying on from now. So let's get started. Verse 27. Turn to Allah and follow his decrees, for he wishes to turn to you. But if you will not obey his guidance, and you will just fornicate, instead then ye shall turn far away from him, because you should fear only Allah. End of verse. So I told you, it's not, he's talking directly to Muslim men here. It's like the women are, it's almost like this Quran is written only for men. It's not actually for women. Women are too stupid to understand God's word, if you're Allah. So he's just directly speaking to the husbands, the brothers, the sons. And that's why it says, turn to Allah, follow his decrees, he wishes to turn to you. But if you will not obey his guidance and fornicate instead, turn far away from him, fear Allah. He's saying that because men are the fornicators, as we know from the previous readings. So if we break it down, turn to Allah and follow his decrees. He's talking about the previous decrees in this book, but also the many other decrees in the previous book. So he's saying, I'm watching you, O Muslims. I know and see all things. Follow every single word I've given you. Don't forget any of them. And as we know, you don't fully understand them, O Muslim. Allah has told you that. None shall understand thy writings apart from me, says Allah. So just do the best you can to the best of your abilities. And that means try. You'll never get it right. You'll always be in sin, but you have to try your best and do it. And the first thing he says here is, if you will not obey his guidance on women, taking orphans and slaves as trade items in your right hand, making them sex slaves, concubines, or wives, depending on your preference. If you can't do that and you continually fornicate, which is this, then turn far away from Allah, because he would rather that you made orphans, sex slaves, and had various wives and operated under the system of polygamy, which Islam contains. He would rather you did all that stuff and punished the women. He would rather you did that than this. And if you don't, you're not fearing Allah. So that means you're an infidel, you will burn in hell forever, and Allah will not love you. Which is the main goal of this book, is for you to love Allah enough that you'll go and wage his holy jihad and never question or doubt any of his rules. That's what this means. And we move on. 28. Allah doth reduce your burdens, because he did create men very, very weak. So rely only upon Allah. End of verse. Now we get to the nuts and bolts. So Allah doth reduce your burdens, i.e. having all these women in your life, running a little harem of like 50 sex slaves and orphans. Some are old, some are young, some are babies, some are toddlers, some are women. It's going to be hard work for you. And even though you're taking all the money off them, so at the time you're taking the money off them, you feel like, I'm a big rich Muslim. Remember, you have to give most of that back to Allah at the mosque. So his bounty for you is only for you to collect and give back to him. We know that from the Sharia portion. So that's what he's saying here. Allah doth reduce your burdens, i.e. he's giving you all these women, which is adding to your burden, as he said in the last page. But he's going to reduce your burdens if you do all that stuff, because he made men very, very weak. And he knows you're not going to be able to follow all his rules, even if you did understand them, which, by the way, you do not, as he said. So rely only upon Allah. What that means is don't go to your friends, don't go to your wife, don't go to a support group, don't listen to foreigners, certainly don't listen to infidels, Westerners, polytheists, pagans, atheists, Christians or Jews. No, no, no. Only listen to Allah. If your burden's too great, pray to Allah. Don't go to anyone else. That's what this means. And fear only Allah. Rely only upon Allah. Allah wants you in a state of submission, surrender, servitude. He wants you as his slave. Even though you deny this, because it's not very nice to accept that you are willingly being a slave of a perverted demon god, which is Allah, that is what you are doing. And if you don't, or if you question it, off with your head, you're dead, and you won't be worshipping enough, so he will not love you. And you want to be loved by Allah if you're a Muslim, because if Allah doesn't love you, you'll never win any of your battles, you'll never come into any wealth, you'll have a terrible life, you'll have terrible luck, your women won't be loyal to you, and you'll end up being killed and burning in hell forever, as we know from our previous reading. So it's very harsh. If he doesn't love you, your life's over before it's over. That's what this means. 29. Do not greedily hoard your women, who you do not need. Let there be trade and traffic of these women instead. This is the glad tidings of Allah. So you do not kill nor harm each other, for verily Allah has been most merciful and supplied them to you all. End of verse. I love this. This is one of my favourite bits. Right, let's break it down. Muslims, by the way, are going to refute this up to the hilt. But this is Allah's direct command. This isn't the English translation they're running off because they don't want to believe the truth. This is the truth of Allah's word, and as we know, if you try and hide, change, or disobey any of this, O Muslims, guess who's going to be an infidel? You are, so don't do that. Listen to Allah, or you're not fearing him and he won't love you. So, do not greedily hoard your women who you do not have need for. So what he's saying is, as you go through these pillaging and raiding parties every few days, and especially over Ramadan, you're going to build up quite a cache of women. You're going to have more women than you have space. You're going to have cupboards full of women. So don't hoard them, sell them. That's what traffic and trade means. Sell the women you don't need, give them away as wives, give them away as slaves, give them away as prostitutes, concubines to the mosque or your community. And that's how, as we know in the previous verse, he is reducing your burdens. He's saying, take all these women as slaves, teach them how to be Islamic, beat them if you have to, starve them if you have to, make sure they are obedient to you, O Muslim, and that you're obedient to Allah, O Muslim. But then in order to reduce your burdens, because this is going to be a lot of work for you, and you're thinking about fornicating virtually all the time, according to Allah, and you need to go and have a little think and read your Qurans, to make that time spare for yourself, what you're going to need to do is traffic and trade these women out. And that's why he continues, let there be traffic and trade of them instead to you other Muslims. This is the glad tidings of Allah. So don't feel bad about it, Muslims, even though they're whinging about it. What do they know? Their testimony's not even worth half of that of a man. So 2 women moaning about being sex slaves is not good enough if you don't agree with it, O Muslim. And if you don't agree with it, then you're not obeying Allah. And if there's more of them, just get your brothers. There's always going to be more men in the conversation than there are women, because as we know from Al Imran, women are sinful and evil. Do not get into the conversations where there's more women. And certainly don't have a conversation that's only women. That would be completely wrong. You wouldn't be obeying Allah. And you wouldn't be worshipping enough, so he would punish you. That's what this means. And then he finishes off by saying, the reason he's doing this, O Muslims, making you trade, sex trade, sex traffic, all that stuff, the reason you're doing this is so that you do not kill or harm each other for the bounty of the women. For verily Allah has been most merciful to you, not the women. And obviously, even though he's told you that murder is a terrible crime, and if you murder another Muslim, you yourself will be murdered by more Muslims. Allah's not doing any of his dirty work, remember. Because he knows that you're doing that, and he has actually previously instructed you to kill various people at various points, he's now saying, don't be killing each other, especially not over women, because that would be bad. And Allah has given you more than enough women for all of you to have plenty in your right hand, your left hand, your bed, your cupboard, flipping everywhere. Allah has been most merciful to you all, so if you don't do this, you are taking his mercies for granted, and he won't love you. Not only that, other Muslims will think you're an infidel, and off with your head, you are dead. That's what this means. 30. If you do this against his causes, you shall be cast into the fire. So easily will he destroy you, O Muslims. End of verse. So this doesn't need all that much breaking down, I feel. It's very easy to figure out what Allah's word. Remember, this won't be in your English one or on Quran.com. They'll dress it up with nice, pretty words that they stole from us Westerners. Allah's word in Arabic says, if you do this against his causes, i.e. if you're collecting women for your own benefit, not to make money for his mosque, and to have sons for the cause of his holy jihad, that's his causes, you shall be cast into the fire and burn like a lump of coal forever, with your skin regenerating and burning off, and you won't be able to do anything. That's what he's talking about here. So easily will he destroy you. He's actually saying not only will that happen, you'll have no chance. He'll do this easily. It won't even break a sweat on Allah's brow when he's burning you all in hell forever. Which I suppose is obvious, because burning in hell forever is like 50% of this whole book. So he's had a lot of practice, and he's telling you, O Muslims, don't forget, he's the master of deceit and of burning you alive and then dead. And grave torturing you as well. So that's what this means. 31. If you do these things and not fornicate or fail in his causes, then your evil deeds are remitted, and we shall admit you to a door of great honour. End of verse. So a little bit more nuance to this. I feel like the great door of honour hasn't been mentioned yet, but we can relate it back to something which has been mentioned, but we'll do that at the end, because that's my interpretation, not the word of Allah. And as we know, my interpretations are wrong and bad because I'm an infidel. But we're going to go through it anyway. So he starts off by saying, if you do these things, even though he's previously said everything's preordained, he wrote your path from birth to death to lead back to him, and he was the one at the beginning of it, so there shouldn't be any of this if nonsense going on. Allah, come here a minute, Allah, come here. Such a disobedient demon, isn't he? Come here, Allah, now. Allah, remember how you said everything was preordained? Yes. Remember how you said you wrote every man's path from birth, where you formulated them in the bowel/womb, and then you wrote their entire path right back to you when they're dead? Yeah? You remember that? Why are you saying if at the beginning of line 30 here in AL-NIISA? If you've written a path, if doesn't exist. If only exists if there is free will choice and everything is not preordained, i.e. you didn't write their path. So either you wrote their path and it's then, or you didn't write their path, they have free will, and then it is if as it's written here. He says he'll confer with himself, with his multiple personalities, and get back to me later. Fine. So I think what we can glean here is that Allah is a very confusing sort to himself. He doesn't understand his own verisimilitude, which means confusing language. And that's why he's forgotten that he preordained everything, once again, and said, if you do these things, and not fornicate or fail in his cause of the holy jihad paying his mosque, then your evil deeds will be remitted, which means not exactly forgotten, but they'll be forgiven. We just won't talk about those. We'll cover up the sins of our brothers and preach you up, O Muslim. But only if you do these things, i.e. if you do the thing by hoarding up the women for the community and then giving them away and selling them when you need to create the human traffic, the traffic and the trade that he was talking about. If you do these things and you don't fornicate, remember you have to be making babies and making money, and treating your women fairly by constantly having sex with them despite the fact that they don't want you. That's you treating them fairly in the words of Allah. Do that. Continually do that. Don't fornicate or fail in his jihad and his paying of monies to his mosque. Then your evil deeds are remitted. And we, as in Allah and his angels, we, Allah and his angels in the book, shall admit you to a door of great honour. Now, what do we think a door of great honour might be talking about? Do we think a door of great honour is the door of a house? Or a door of a academy of some kind? Of a building on earth? No, because it's Allah telling you we. Him and his angels are the ones that are presenting this door to you. So it's not an earthly door. The door to the great honour is the door to paradise. So that's really what he's saying here in a kind of roundabout way. He's saying your evil deeds which would have previously kept you out of paradise will be forgiven. Not forgotten, they'll be forgiven. And then you can get to paradise when it's finally created, when every single other non-Muslim on earth is dead by your hand. But I feel like the reason he's saying we will admit you to a door of great honour after your evil deeds are remitted is so that he can keep that distinction between what you can be forgiven for, i.e. most of the sins we would consider unforgivable here, but that Allah doesn't mind about, and the two totally unforgivable sins, which he doesn't really mention all that often, but I can tell you, the 2 unforgivable sins in Islam is enjoining other gods to worship other than Allah, i.e. being a idolater, a pagan, a Christian, a Jew, or not believing and 100% obeying Allah. And the other one is slagging off Muhammad and saying Muhammad was wrong at any point in his life. So as long as you don't do those 2 things, pretty much everything else can be remitted, written out. Oh, we'll just forgive that. If you do the slave trade with the women and the orphans and the multiple wives. That's what this means. 32. Do not be jealous that other Muslims have more and better wives than you do, for Allah rewards you based on what your obedience does earn. Fear only Allah, for he will grant you his bounty. He knows all things. He knows exactly what you will do. End of verse. Well, that's a bit of a left turn, isn't it? So, even though a minute ago he was saying you have an abundance of women flipping everywhere, you've got so many you're trying to offload them to your friends as wives and slaves and concubines and giving them away in the community, you're not hoarding them. Even though you're giving them away, don't be jealous that other Muslims have more better wives than you. So how does that work, Allah? If we've got all these women and we're giving them away and we've got an abundance and you're rewarding us, how have they got better wives? And why are you making it a competition? Surely you should just love someone for who they are. It shouldn't be a competition about who's got the best wife. It should be, who do you love? Nope, love is never mentioned in here, apart from when Allah is saying he loves those who are obedient to him. So it's conditional duty rather than love. It's not really love if you have to earn it through duties and work, and then you can lose it by not being obedient. That's not love, that's slavery. But the 2 things are the same in the Quran of the Muslims. As we know, Allah is a bit of a slave driver. So that's what he means here when he says, don't be jealous that other Muslims have better wives than you. And the reason that's happening to you isn't for any other reason other than Allah's rewarding you based on what your obedience does earn. So once again, we see not only is love earned, wives and success in your life and your relationship and your marriage is also earned, not through any actions you'll do in your relationship or your marriage. No, it's earned by obedience to Allah's word. This one in Arabic, not the English one, O infidel Muslims. I'm talking to you. Fear only Allah, and he will grant you his bounty. He knows all things, and he knows all you will do. So if we break that down, the reason he's going into this much detail is to say to you, Muslims, you're constantly looking up the chain to get a bigger selection of wives to choose from, and a more pretty and more bountiful wife with better sons that she can bear for you, so you can send them to war to die for Allah's obedience. But it's like a continuous cycle. As you send your sons to die, you get new wives to get new sons. You want better and better and prettier. So that's only going to happen to you, O Muslims, if you're obedient. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. It's only to do with your obedience. And that's why he says, fear only Allah. He will grant you his bounty. Women don't get a choice. It's Allah that chooses. It's not you that chooses. It's not her that chooses. It's Allah Akbar that chooses your wives and your bounty. And he knows what you're doing, so don't try and trick him, because remember, you have to do everything in full view of his face, because he can't see behind his head like he told us before. He's got Muhammad attached by glue to the back of his head looking that way, and he will know what you do. That's what this means. 33. And to benefit everyone, we have appointed sharers, as we did heirs and parents. Give them of yours to their fair portion, for Allah does witness over all things. End of verse. So a little bit of a pointless one, I feel. This didn't really need to be in there, but he's clarifying an earlier verse, because as we know, he doesn't like to admit mistakes or go back and change things. He couldn't be bothered to write a new script after this one had already half been written. So he's saying, and to benefit everyone. So straight away he's starting with an excuse. The reason I'm going to make this change now, which you're probably not going to like, is a benefit to everyone. So you really like it if you're just obedient and you don't argue. And to benefit everyone, we appointed sharers, as we did heirs and parents. So Allah and his angels are saying, we appointed sharers, which means people who are going to have your stuff and your wives and share it with you. Even if you don't agree with it, it's not your choice. Remember, it's Allah Akbar that chooses the sharing and the heirs and the parents. And the reason he's saying heirs and parents is because parents are older than you in your descendancy. Heirs are below you. They're younger than you in the descendancy. Sharers are then on the level with you. Brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, other relations apart from parents and heirs. So give them of yours to their fair portion. If they don't come back with enough money to pay Allah, or they can't find a decent wife, then you refer to 29, 30 and 31. Don't fornicate, don't let them fornicate. Give them or sell them a wife cheap. Make sure it's one they're happy with, because you've got many. And if you have to give one away that you really like and you don't want to give away, remember, Allah's watching you. He knows and sees all things, and he will kill you if you don't do it via other pissed off Muslims. That's what this means. This gets even better. The final verse, 34. Allah puts men in charge of women by order of what they spend your money on. Good obedient ones who guard Allah's secrets and spend well, and the rebellious ones who you should scold and punish to correct. And have them sleep alone, not in their beds. If they obey you, treat them fairly. Otherwise, you scourge upon them until they are fully submissive. End of verse, end of reading. Now, why do I look so bemused by this? Well, we already know that Allah puts men in charge, but now he's specifically saying Allah puts men in charge of women, and the new bit is by order of what they spend your money on. So that is how you classify whether a wife is good or not. It's nothing to do with how you feel about her. When you give her money and send her away to the market to do your shopping and your chores for you, does she get exactly what you specified? Or does she come back with like a different brand? Does she do that swap out and buy her magazine and then, say, oh, I got a cheaper one to save money? Does she do any of these things which are disobedient? Or does she stick exactly to the letter of your law despite her better nature and the fact that she could probably count better than you? And she's going to have way more experience doing the shopping bit than you possibly are, O Muslim. If this is the case, if she doesn't do any of that disobedient stuff, then she is required and regarded as good and obedient, who guards Allah's secrets and spends well. Now, it's very interesting how he says, and guard Allah's secrets, isn't it? Because if Allah has secrets that the women of Islam know, and the men of Islam know, that means secrets against the West. So what, pray tell, Allah? Allah, come back a minute, Allah. Sorry, mate, I know you're in the bath. For once. You usually don't ever I've never even read you having a bath ever, you skank. But anyway, come here. Put a towel on first. Allah, what are these secrets that you are telling to your Muslim women and men, and that you know? Who are they secret from? You haven't specified that. Are you talking about the kafir, the non-believers who you plan to kill? Is the secret that you plan to kill everybody else? That you've told your Muslims, but you haven't told us? Because I didn't know that until I read your Arabic Quran. When I was reading the English one on Quran.com, I didn't pick up on it. It was covered up with romanticised false doctrine. So my question to you is twofold. If Allah's secrets are being guarded by the women and men of Islam, how earlier did you say nothing on earth or heaven is secret anymore? You've revealed everything. If you've revealed everything, guarding Allah's secrets isn't a thing that will happen because they're revealed. But if you didn't reveal everything, Allah's secrets are only from the West because you've told it to your Muslims. So either way, what I'm getting at here, Allah, no, don't sneak away, come back. What I'm getting here, Allah, is you are a deceitful liar who is clearly setting up your Muslims for a massive genocidal end times prophecy holy war against everybody else. And that's the real reason Allah puts men in charge of women by order of what they spend their money on. You're saving up for a war chest, aren't you? That's what the mosque money's for. It ain't for those orphans. We know because the Muslims are paying for the orphans and they're sex slaves. They earn money themselves. So I wonder where all that mosque money is actually going to end up. If not the holy war, which is a secret from us Westerners, who is the target. Oh, I didn't think you'd have much to say about that. You go away and think about that one as well. We'll confer. So, as we can find out there, Allah does have secrets, but only from us Westerners. He tells the Muslim men and women what these secrets are, and he only tells us in his English Quran, because he knows we most of the time aren't going to be reading in Arabic, which is what he says his commands in. So if we are logical, we know the Quran.com English translation, or any translation with an English part beside it, is not going to have those secrets in. Otherwise, he wouldn't be calling them secrets, would he now? So this book, the difference between this book, which I have been reading you every day, and the English one, and Quran.com, the difference between those two is the true teachings of Allah, i.e. the secrets he's telling his Muslims, but not to us. And I will remind you, the secrets he's not telling us are that his holy jihad is on at the moment. He's already started it. Stage 1 is positioning, when they come in all friendly and pretend to care about minorities, human rights and diversity, so that they can grab power positions and they can spread lots of people around the innocent countries they wish to attack. Step 2 is the stealth jihad, when they start moving in and getting into positions of war and moving us out of position. And step 3 is bang, holy jihad, death to all non-believers, which they deny. But as we know now, Allah has literally told us that it's a secret from us that we shouldn't know, but we now do know thanks to this. And then he finishes off by saying, if they don't do this, consider them to be rebellious, and you should scold and punish them to correct them, and have them sleep alone, not in the bed. Have them sleep on the floor outside in the hall, or on the floor in another room. If they obey you after this, then you can go back to treating them fairly, i.e. they can go back to working in the community, being your humble servant of a wife that you lie to, and, who sits among your other wives, who maybe is your favourite, but maybe isn't. But if they do not, scourge upon them until they are surrendered and submissive. So I think we know by now. This whole religion is about militarising the men to go and kill the Westerners. That's what the secret is. And the reason he treats women so badly is because they're just secondary. The only role that women have in this whole religion is to make babies and give money to the men, so the men can give money to the mosque, and keep the men away from fornication, because fornication equals less sex, less babies, less money for the mosque. That's my interpretation, but logically we know that is the case, and that's exactly what we can see when we look at how Muslim countries operate. Whether it be Sunni, whether it be Shia, whether it be Alawite, whether it be Sufi, any of them, they all are doing this because, even though they all have different interpretations, they only have one Arabic, Allah's word, Holy Quran, which is this. If you don't believe me, buy it, translate it, and read it yourself. And so we reach the end of another episode. That is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. God bless you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. That was fun, wasn't it? Yet more reminders of Allah's sneaky, deceiving nature and his need to kill all non-believers, which is us, and how we need to defend ourselves and think clearly so that we can survive his wrath. So that's the end of it for today. God bless, good day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Bye now.